Mayor, we're now live.
Oh, we're live. Great. Okay.
Hey, Robert, don't forget to put that thing closer.
And
Capture all the beauty.
okay, so welcome to our April 27, 2021 City Council meeting for the City of Sierra Madre. And we are going to call the meeting to order. And I'll ask Madam City Clerk if she can please take roll.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Rachel Arizmendi,
Present?
Mayor Pro Tem Jean Doss,
Here.
Councilmember Edward Garcia,
Present.
Councilmember Kelly Creeves. Here. Councilmember Robert Parkhurst.
Here.
Thank you, Mayor. You have a quorum. You may conduct city business.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Councilmember Garcia if he can lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and inspiration.
Please rise if you're able. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America. Republic which stands, one nation, under God,
Thank you. So while April 2021 in Sierra Madre may be remembered by the children as the month they were able to return to their school campuses after more than a year of distance learning, or by adults as the month that the Buck was able to reopen after being closed for a similar timeline, let us not forget all the good that happened during our time of closures. Residents Mike and Natasha Comer, along with Tom and Don Dennison, started Sierra Madre Thrives that helped out local businesses while simultaneously helping those in need of a meal. Facilitated by a team of volunteers, including our own Mayor Arizmendi, Chief Armelin, Chief Bartlett, Rebecca Silva Barone, Clarissa Lowe, and Lauren Hines from the Community Services Department, our City Clerk Laura Aguilar, as well as other city staff and many community volunteers that helped out at the weekly quarantine cafes. Also, let us not forget Megan Malooly, who selflessly stepped up to help those in need with Sierra Madre Helping Hand, currently known as Sierra Madre Gives Back. While the pandemic and subsequent closures of businesses and schools were hopefully once-in-a-lifetime events, the spirit of volunteerism has been one of the defining characteristics of our wonderful community of Sierra Madre that has been around for decades, and I pray will continue long into the future. Our quaint business district, beautiful mountain views, and diverse architecture in town are wonderful things, but it is the community. Rather, what the community chooses to do with our time and resources that define Sierra Madre and makes it the special place that we are privileged to call home. So why am I discussing this during my turn to speak on inspiration? It's because April is National Volunteer Month, and it is named so as a result of President George H.W. Bush's 1,000 Points of Light campaign. It is believed that this term, 1,000 Points of Light, may have been inspired by C.S. Lewis in his book, The Magician's Nephew, where Lewis writes, "One moment, there had been nothing but darkness. Next moment, 1,000 points of light leapt out. Single stars, constellations, and planets brighter and bigger than any in our world." I hope as we emerge from this dark period of the last year, we emerge smarter, more energized, and appreciative of the community, bringing even more light than ever before. Upon accepting the nomination from his party, the then candidate George H.W. Bush addressed America's clubs and volunteer organizations saying, "A brilliant diversity spread like stars, like 1,000 points of light in a broad and peaceful sky." About 6 months later, during his inauguration, he went on to say, "I've spoken of 1,000 points of light, of all the community organizations that are spread like stars throughout the nation, doing good. We will work hand in hand, encouraging, sometimes leading, sometimes being led, rewarding." This is the model that we have here in Sierra Madre that is only made possible by the self-giving spirit of volunteerism that thrives here in our town. While our wonderful fire department is now a fully professional department, let us not forget the roots of the department that began 99 years ago and was mainly volunteers up until recent years. Additionally, more organizations here in town step up and help out in so many different ways, Some of those organizations are, and this is a long list and it's raining, so bear with me. I think it's important, knowing that we have such a small town of 11,000 residents and we have so many volunteers. Sierra Madre Emergency Communications Team, the Rotary Club, Sierra Madre CERT, Sierra Madre Civic Club, the Sierra Madre Playhouse, Creative Arts Group, Friends of Sierra Madre Library, Sierra Madre Chamber of Commerce, Sierra Madre Community Foundation, Sierra Madre Environmental Action Council, Sierra Madre Garden Club, Sierra Madre Historical Preservation Society, Sierra Madre Mountain Conservancy, Sierra Madre Kiwanis Club, Sierra Madre Little League, Sierra Madre Girls Softball, Sierra Madre Pony, Sierra Madre Women's Club, the Veterans of Foreign War Post 3208, the Boy Scout and Girl Scout troops here in town, the Mount Wilson Trail Committee, the 4th of July Committee, the Wisteria Festival organizers, Sierra Madre's Middle School Service Club, known as the Hawks Helpers, the churches in town that pour their resources back into the community, members of the community services, Diener, library trustees, planning and senior commissions. And there are even more organizations that I didn't mention and individuals that embody the spirit of volunteerism that I did not mention. Without all of you, Sierra Madre is just another town that looks good on the outside, but it is because of you we thrive internally as a community. To the hundreds and hundreds of residents here in town that give up their time and resources for the benefit of their neighbor, thank you. Volunteers at Sierra Madre, you inspire.
Thank you, Councilmember Garcia. Where did you get your list from?
Partially from our city's website and partially from memory.
That was quite impressive. Thank you. And thank you again to all the volunteers. I did not realize this month is National Volunteer Month. So thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the meeting agenda. Do I have a motion or do we have any changes?
Move to approve.
Mayor Pro Tem Goff. Thank you, Councilmember Creeds. All in favor?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I did have an edit to the, I think I had an edit to the minutes, but I can't pull it out right now because of my my computer. I apologize for that. I can take a look here in a second.
Okay, when we get to that point, we'll see if we can make that change somehow. So all in favor for the meeting agenda,
Oh, I'm sorry.
please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, none abstained, that motion carries unanimously. Next item is the approval for the reading resolutions and ordinances. Vote of the city council to read all ordinances and resolutions by title only and waive the reading in full. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Doesn't look like we have any abstentions or opposition to that. Motion carries. And so now for the approval of the minutes. It sounds like Councilmember Parkhurst may have something at some point. We can also table this to the next meeting. Councilmember Parkhurst. Okay, Councilmember.
I was changes that maybe I remember.
Okay. This is true volunteerism right here. True commitment. Back. Actually, do we want to take a pause to move the tables back underneath the awning? Will, Mike, will the wires go that far? Maybe not.
That'd be okay. I mean,
Mayor, we could take a 20-minute recess.
Let's do a 5. Can we do a 5?
then
Let's try for 5. motion carries unanimously. The next item on the agenda is the mayor and city council reports. Who would like to start?
Madam Mayor,
Member Creeds.
I just wanted to report that along with the mayor and Councilmember Parkhurst, maybe others, I didn't be there, attended the unveiling of the new and refurbished stars at the Sierra Madre Playhouse. And it was just a really nice evening. I think people were very excited to have an event, and there was a nice crowd that came. And I felt like the tributes given to the newest awardees of the stars on the Hall of the Walk of Fame in front of the Playhouse were really touching, and sort of harken back to Councilmember Garcia's inspiration today about the power of volunteerism and how these folks really did save and preserve our Playhouse, which is such an important part of our community. And I was really thankful to learn about them and thankful that they were dedicated to saving and preserving such an important piece of our community.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Creeds.
Madam Mayor?
Councilmember Parkhurst.
And so last week I attended of the Clean Power Alliance's request for offers for new projects. And these were projects for low-income solar projects within our service territory. It was really fascinating. We had one that was out in just over the mountains there, a larger solar project, and another one that was in a low-income area with solar panels on storage building. And so, these are bringing, what was fabulous about them is that they're bringing renewable energy to our residents, but they're also bringing revenue to areas that haven't had revenue in the past. It's an opportunity, at least in the one on the storage buildings, for people in the community to actually directly invest in that project. They call them community solar projects, and it's a really incredible opportunity. And if you do want to get into details, we do have the Executive Director of Clean Power Alliance that can answer questions, but those are going to go before the board here shortly. Just really, again, it's an exciting opportunity that we have in creating the energy of the future.
Thank you. No reports?
Just
Mayor Pro Tem?
something very brief. Today I had a chance to, management analyst Kowalski took me to see the so-called Monopoly Board, which was made by a landscape architect for the city to kind of lay out some ideas for the library update and expansion, which includes some ideas for the vacant lot behind the library. It's very promising. I'm very excited by what I saw today. The committee of the Board of Trustees of the library will be meeting Thursday. They're going to go over it, kick it around a little bit, and we'll see where it goes from there. But I think we're getting closer and closer to a point where we here on the city council are going to have something to sink our teeth into in terms of a plan for a new library in the not too distant future. So, exciting development.
Very exciting. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I don't have a report today, just wanted to announce if folks don't already know, but City Hall is now open at limited capacity, as well as our library also. And just for planning, if you do need to go to planning, just make sure you're making an appointment because those are by appointment only. And I also wanted to take a moment to introduce our new intern that we're very excited about. She has some experience that she's going to be bringing to us, as well as hopefully that we'll be providing for her. And I'm going to invite Alondra Reynoso to share a few words and to say hello.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alondra Reynoso.
You're going to have to go closer to the mic, Alondra.
I'm a recent graduate from Pittsburgh College over in Claremont, California, where I studied environmental analysis with a policy focus and minor in Spanish. Thank you for the welcome. I'm really excited to be here and help out.
Great. Well, welcome.
Welcome.
And I understand we have quite a few projects ready for you to go. James, can you ask if we can turn up that microphone also for the podium?
It's up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, next is public comment. If anyone has any public comment for items not in the agenda, and I see Deb coming down. And I know we have some that were emailed also. So Deb, if you can
Closer to the radio. There you go.
share your name, please, and you have 3 minutes.
Of course, yes. Deb Sheridan, Valley Vista Drive, and I hear an echo. But good afternoon, Madam Mayor and City Council members. Today is April 27th, and here it is, we're being rained on. But I just wanted to point out that the next time that you will meet is May 11th. And I am reminding you that you said that you would revisit your 2 decisions regarding the Planning Commission in May. First of all, reducing the commission from 7 to 5 people. And secondly, shifting the decision-making for conditional use permits of houses that are not in compliance with our zoning laws to staff. The commissions are volunteers, as we just heard, but they are the voice of the residents, and the city council took this away. Not only is there a major project coming, a planned project, 42 homes at the monastery, but don't forget that One Carter will also have their homes come before either the planning commission or staff, because I'm making a big leap here and assuming that they will not be within our zoning laws. So I thank you very much for revisiting this, and please put it on the agenda for next time. And thank you, and hopefully, well, what should I say about the rain? No, it's gone or not gone. Hopefully it's gone till about 8 o'clock. Thank you.
Thanks, Deb.
Good afternoon. Lynn Coleman, West Carter Avenue. While I'm here, I just thought I'd ask a couple quick questions. One, when do you anticipate getting back indoors for council meetings? Is that something that we'll be discussing soon? I would also like to request that the meetings be held a little bit later. 4 o'clock in the afternoon is really difficult for some of my friends and neighbors who work, and frankly don't get home till 5:30 or 6. So maybe you'll get a little better attendance despite the rain if the meeting is held at a little bit more convenient time.
Thank you. And I did intend to provide in my report that we are looking as to what the planning will look like for returning city council back into chambers. And we are going to wait for the June 15 is when we expect to hear new directives from the state and also from the county, so we can plan accordingly. Do you have anyone else that would like to provide public comment on items not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, Madam City Clerk, I believe we have at least one email for public comment.
Switch on.
Thank you. Yes, Mayor, we received one email. The email received today was from Karen Clemens, she's the owner of Mother Moo Creamery. Her email reads, "Dear Council, dear members of the Sierra Madre City Council, forgive me for submitting my comments in writing. I would very much like to deliver them in person, but I am driving my son to a high school baseball game this afternoon. My name is Karen Clemens. I have been the owner of Mother Moo Creamery for the last 10 years, in which I took over and completely renovated a severely vandalized vacant chain restaurant, Domino's Pizza. My business started from scratch. Everything that exists today is because of hard work, self-education, and my own finances and resources to make it succeed. I started from nothing and have worked very hard to make sure my livelihood was not lost to the pandemic. Ever since I signed my lease back in 2011, I have been told that there were plans and discussions for a refresh of First in Court. Little did I know or realize that this refresh would happen on the heels of a national and international pandemic in which my business, along with so many others, would be closed and fighting for survival. I have been in discussions with the city this past year since March 2020, when we closed our business due to safer at home guidelines. This past year, we have changed our operating procedures to ensure the safety of our employees, and the city adapted its rules for some businesses to operate outdoor dining. During this time, we were allowed to deliver packaged food to our patrons on Montecito Court. In June, when construction began for the outside temporary patios, I was told by the city that my seating would be Kirsten Court. At that time, I was told by the city manager that the area in Kirsten Court is a bit different from other street patios. The city was in the throes of purchasing and placing several tables and chairs for placement in Kirsten Court, which is where we envision the customers and residents to go who eat at establishments that do not provide table service. Fast forward to fall 2020, when I was told construction for the refresh would start after the Christmas holiday, tentatively January 1st. At that time, I told the city manager that not everyone relies on Christmas sales, and that in fact, the new construction timeframe would greatly impede my ability to do business. For those who aren't familiar with the ice cream and pie business, my season begins in March. As soon as we hit daylight savings time from February through June, we experience or hope to experience high volume days or moments. Valentine's Day, 3-day weekends of President's Day, spring break, Easter, Passover, school reopening, confirmations, baseball game victories or defeats, and upcoming Mother's Day, which is really a big day for us. Graduation happens the week after Memorial Day. We lost a lot of large family events, not just someone who wants to scoop during those glorious spring days, event days. We rely on their volume to get us out of our winter sales slump and to make us profitable for our utility expensive summer. Christmas isn't a big holiday for us.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. You've extended for 3 minutes, and I believe we all have a copy of that public comment. We'll make sure to review it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is presentation, and we are going to invite Ted Bardacki, our Executive Director for Clean Power Alliance, to the podium.
Yeah. Do you have a copy in your packet of the presentation? Good afternoon, Mayor and.
Can you please speak a little bit closer to the mic?
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So good evening, Mayor and council members. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Councilmember Parkhurst, for the invitation. I know I'm here to talk mostly about costs and rates and SB 12, which is a bill that yesterday passed out of the Senate Energy Committee. But I included in your packet just a couple of beginning slides for a little bit of a refresher on Clean Power Alliance to remind you and the public on what we're about, sort of above and beyond being the 5th largest retail seller of electricity in California, as well as the nation's largest provider of 100% renewable energy. We have over 300,000 customers getting 100% renewable energy for our service. And that's more than, that's actually on its own would be the 100th largest electricity utility in the entire country. Just those 300,000 customers, including the vast majority of the customers here in Sierra Madre. But some of those things are programs, whether that's demand response or resiliency projects that we're working on with all of our member agencies, promotion of transportation electrification. I drove in my electric car. I hope we can get some chargers here soon so I can get home, but that's good. Definitely, as Robert mentioned, discounts for low-income customers. In economic development, we We've signed 14 long-term power purchase agreements, which are going to create over 2,500 jobs here in Southern California and really prepare the workforce of the future. We're doing this all with our local values and priorities in this broad-based transition. So that's just some of what's in your first slides here, service areas supporting our communities. What I'd hope is we could fast forward to slide 6, which is this one here, where our 3 rate choices are listed. So a reminder that we have 3 rate choices. We have lean power, clean power, and 100% green power. They different levels of renewable energy in them. And as a customer of Clean Power Alliance, you can change your rate at any time. The fact of the matter is we don't see people changing their rates very much. Mostly they stick with the default product that a particular member agency or particular city or county chooses. And if you go to the next slide, slide 7, here in Sierra Madre, you started out at Clean Power and last October moved to 100% green power. That has been, from a customer perspective, a very seamless transition. We have 97% participation rate here in Sierra Madre. That means only 3% of the customers have chosen to go back to Southern California Edison, and of those customers, over 99% of them are now on 100%. So some metrics there of the greenhouse gas emissions that you all have saved, converted into cars. And I'll note that it's one of the highest participation rates, 97% in the entire 32 communities that we serve. And I think, that's a testament to the environmental values of this council, your residents. Also, I've been executive director since the beginning of Clean Power Alliance in 2018, and we've been really blessed with excellent board representation, beginning with John Harabedian, John Capocha, and now Robert Parkhurst. There's a real connection, and James, who's been the one constant as an alternate here, a really strong representation. They've all served on committees, on our energy committee, helping choose those projects that are now serving our customers. So really appreciate the diligence. There's 2 other things that I want to note on this slide. During COVID, we provided bill credits to over 77,000 customers across the territory. Folks who were newly struggling, who either got laid off, had their hours reduced, had some kind of event related to COVID that reduced their income, were automatically eligible for bill credits. And we provided those bill credits to almost 7% of our customer base, including almost 225 customers here in Sierra Madre. We're also rolling out what we call an arrearage management plan, where people with past due amounts of over $500, if they get current, start paying regularly and pay regularly for 1 year, we will write off up to $8,000 of their past due bills through some money that we got from the state. During COVID, we tried to help folks who were immediately struggling by providing bill credits, and now we're going to help folks sort of dig out of the hole who are still in the hole. And there's 20 residents here in Sierra Madre who are eligible for those write-offs, and we're working with them to help roll out that program here, or across our service territory. Now, if you go to the next slide, just again a reminder of how our rates work. We provide generation, we provide the electrons, and Southern California Edison still is responsible for the transmission and distribution of those electrons. So they run the lines and wires, we provide the electricity that goes onto those. As you can see, here's just an example bill from one of our staff members in Del Rey. when we started 3 years ago, about half of the cost was generation and half of the cost was the lines and the wires. Well, as a result of needing to make lots of new investments in the grid, as well as pay off wildfire liability and damages, the distribution side of the bill has gone up significantly. And now we're in a situation where our charges are only about 1/3 of the bill. And that's just happened over the last 3 years. And energy is a dynamic market, dynamic system, and I expect that this trend will continue as the commodities and more renewable energy comes in. Those prices will go down over time, but the continued need for investment in the lines and the wires and wildfire prevention and some of the things that we're facing with climate change will cause those rates to go up. So we're going to become a smaller and smaller part of the bill, but we'll continue to provide that reliable and low carbon electricity. The other thing that's happening in rates is, as you remember, we had some grid instability in August. We had the events in Texas in February. All of this has disturbed the market, and there's going to be, and already has been, quite a bit of market volatility, which is translating into some rate volatility over the course of this year. And in the past, what we have done at Clean Power Alliance is every time Edison made a rate, we have these rate ranges that we're trying to stay within. Every time they changed the rate, we would follow suit and we try to stay within those targets. Well, it's ain't great for customers who see their rates going up and down and up and down, but it's really hard on the fiscal stability of our agency to not know from 1 month to the next or one season to the next what your revenue might be. It makes it hard to plan, it makes it hard to acquire, and it makes it hard to be sure of these local programs that we want to roll out. So in February, in this next slide, slide 9, Edison raised its delivery rates by about 14%, and the PCIA, or the exit fee that our customers pay, went up 27%. And we chose not to change our rates at that time. We won't change our rates till July. But what this has resulted in is that for the first time in our 3-year history, we don't have a single rate that is lower than Edison. We used to have a rate that was 1 to 2% below, and now it's about 1% more expensive. This is disappointing, but it just it's what happens sometimes in these dynamic markets. But it does highlight one of the issues that is in SB 612. Which is that exit fee. Customers pay that every month for resources that were acquired on their behalf before they left, and we think that's right. They should, have responsibility for that. But we're not getting into the benefits. So those resources, they're still providing reliability services. They're still providing greenhouse gas-free and renewable energy, but we're not getting. Our customers are not getting any of the benefits. And what SB 612 does is it says, that's fine, that's the payment that is owed, but you need to give back a portion of those resources that people pay for every month back to Clean Power Alliance. If we get those resources back, we don't then have to pay as much for new energy, and we can control and lower our costs. That is a medium-term effort. Again, it was successful in moving out of its first policy committee yesterday, but we still have some short-term issues. So go to the next slide, just what's going to happen over the next 12 months. So in the summer, Edison's going to have another rate increase. It's going to increase delivery rates and a little bit of generation. So we compare ourselves on generation. That premium may narrow again, but we are also going to have to look at what our costs are going to be next year so that we can cover our costs. So we're considering, the board will be considering a rate adjustment effective in July that continues to protect low-income customers but will also imply a rate increase for our customers. In January and February, Edison will raise rates again. And one of the impacts of this increase is that they will do a backward look to this coming summer. And if there was market instability like there was last summer and rates were very high, they will have to raise rates to make up for what they didn't collect. And that's one of the fundamental differences between us and the investor-owned utility. We look to cover our costs in the current year, and that makes us be very fiscally prudent because we know our costs immediately translate into rates. The investor-owned utilities have this thing where they're sitting on lots of cash, but they also can do a look back. Whatever it costs for them, they get to recover. They have guaranteed cost of recovery. So what has happened, if you go to the next slide, slide 11, is that they set their rates for this year at a time when the August heat wave had happened, but rates had moderated. They were about $60 a megawatt. That's what they set their rates on for the entire year. Since Texas, in February, you could see that the cost of power for this summer has gone from $77 to now up to $112 or more. What the market is saying, the market is starting to price in climate change. The market is saying we expect, actually as a normal thing, these extreme heat waves every year, and that is going to put a stress on power prices. And that's just what we expect now as a market. Insurance companies are starting to do this with sea level rise and other things, and we're just seeing a fundamental change in how markets react to climate change. So what are we doing about this? Next slide. So we did reduce our budget at the last board meeting by about $15 million by identifying some lower cost, low carbon energy sources. And of course, to moderate any increases, we'll continue to offer bill assistance and debt forgiveness programs. Over the medium term, we hope to reduce our costs through SB 612, which we would hope that you would support. Still has a long way to go through both the first and the second house. And then one of the bright spots in electricity costs this year is our renewables costs continue to go down. And what it means is that for customers on our 100% green program, it's likely that their costs will not go up as much as those who buy higher carbon products, which is sort of an interesting redevelopment in the energy space. So we are increasingly going to be bringing long-term power purchase agreements to our board for approval that provides competitive advantage. So I'm going to stop there. There's a little bit more information about what customers can do, including opting out or opting down. Again, we don't see that a lot. And there's this temporal difference now about rates. Whatever someone's rate comparison might be one day is likely to change within a month or two based on what Edison is. So that's it. I'll stop there, and I'm happy to answer any questions, feel any concerns, or take any comments.
Thank you, Mr. Bardaki, for the presentation and also giving us a little bit insight more on Senate Bill 612. But I want to find out from our council members if you have any questions or comments, whether it's about the presentation or the bill itself.
Madam Mayor?
Councilmember Garcia?
Yes, so I believe it was articulated by Councilmember Parkhurst that both Clean Power Alliance and the privately owned utility both support SB 612. Is that true? And
yeah,
to give you a little insight.
Yeah, sure. So the fundamental principles of SB 612 were derived from a consensus working group that Clean Power Alliance chaired on behalf of the CCAs across the state, and Edison chaired on behalf of the So that was a consensus proposal. When that proposal was delivered more than a year ago to the PUC, the PUC sat on it, still did not act for over 13 months. And PG&E did not like some of the things in the proposal. So that's why we ran a bill. Unfortunately, Edison did come out in opposition to the bill, and it was opposition on a procedural basis, which is essentially, this is complicated. It's part of an ongoing CPUC proceeding. This is not the legislature's domain. And so it's not really based on the substance, which is still an outcome of something that they signed off on, but more that they believe that the legislature shouldn't intervene in the PUC's sort of ongoing proceedings. I have a little bit of sympathy for that, but a little bit of my retort is, I think I've got two things in there. The first is that if the PUC had done something with the consensus proposal, even if it had rejected it, but it just didn't do anything for a year. And that's actually when you call on your legislature to give a little nudge. The other thing is that all of the utilities have the experience of not liking what the PUC does and running to the legislature. So it was a little bit of like, why this time? But yesterday at the hearing, all they got up and did when they opposed the bill was say we opposed the bill. They didn't like this. So I've seen them come down harder on that.
Thank you. And as far as the PCIA fee, I want to have a good understanding of, is that for legacy infrastructure, or what exactly are we paying for? Because as you articulated, the transmission and those fees are subject to change depending on the cost of transmission and litigation or whatever it might be, or abatement. So what are the IOUs? What are they charging us for?
Yeah. So they're charging for three things. They're charging for renewable energy projects that are now above market. So these are early renewable energy projects signed in 2010, 2011, 2012, before solar prices went down 80, 90%. So these are projects that are long-term, 10, 20, 30-year contracts that are above market. And so what our customers have to pay are the above market costs for those contracts. Similarly, there are reliability resources, gas plants generally that don't run very often, but when the grid really needs it, they fire them up. And so those projects were also either renovated or built while our customers were still with Edison. So they're actual generation resources, and we don't pay the full cost, we pay the above market costs, or our customers do. And so what we're saying is, well, if they're paying the above market cost for those resources, they ought to get back some of it. It's not only the IOU customers who ought to receive the benefits. So sure, we should pay the costs, but we ought to get the benefits back.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, comment?
One quick one.
Mayor,
You did mention that our rates are going to go up. Do you have any idea what the percentage might be?
Yeah, so what we're looking at is about on a total bill basis about 4%, but we tend to look at our rates in terms of what their comparison is to our competitor, Edison in this case.
That was my next question.
Yeah, so what the board is actually going to be asked to adopt a rate approach at its upcoming May meeting. Our executive committee last week recommended a cost of service based approach, which would mean that the lean and the clean rates, the two lower end ones, would go up more than the 100% green rate, because the 100% green rate is actually got this mitigating factor of the lower cost. So we expect by September that the comparison with Edison for the 100% green rate, if the board does adopt this approach, would stay within the 9% premium that we've always communicated to the customers compared to Edison base rates. The unfortunate part of that is that the lean and the clean rate may be 4 to 6 to maybe even up as much as 7% more than Edison. We're not going to be in a position for the next 6 to 9 months to have a single rate that's cheaper than Edison, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Questions, comments? Okay, Mr. Bardak, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and loving the sun, because every time the sun comes out, we're able to serve our customers better and cheaper. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda are action items. We have our consent calendar, Madam City Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the agenda this afternoon, there are 4 consent items. Consent item A is consideration of resolution 21-24 approving certain demands. It is recommended that the City Council hereby approve payment of city warrants in the aggregate amount of $641,456.09. Sierra Madre Library warrants in the aggregate amount of $5,662.88. And payroll transfer in the aggregate amount of $435,179.23 for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2021. Item B on the consent calendar is consideration of authorization of the city manager to execute CEPPT participation agreement and delegation of authority to request disbursements. It is recommended that the City Council authorize the city manager to enter into the agreement, approve the delegation of authority to reset disbursements to the city manager, finance director, and city treasurer. And number 3, authorize the city manager to determine the asset allocation strategy for the trust fund. Consent item C is consideration of resolution 21-21, adopting a list of projects for fiscal year 2021 through 2022 funded by SB1, the Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017. It is recommended that the City Council approve resolution 21-21, designating certain streets to be included in the fiscal year 21-22 street rehabilitation program. And lastly, consent item D is consideration of authorization of execution of a quit claim deed to Los Angeles County for the transfer of MTD 1784, file with transfer drain, miscellaneous transfer drain to 1784 parcels 1 SD and 1 FE. Project ID number is MPM 0001045. It is recommended that the City Council authorize the mayor to sign a quit claim deed for the property of the transfer property to the County of Los Angeles for the maintenance of the city's storm drains and debris basin at 1 Carter. Thank you, Madam Mayor. That concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Do we have any questions on item A? Approving certain demands. Item B, any questions?
Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Garcia?
I just want to make sure, because the subject on B is authorization to execute SEPT participation agreement and delegation of authority to request disbursements. But there's point 3. I want to make sure point 3 is clear. On page 1 of the staff report, it says authorize the city manager to determine the asset allocation strategy for the trust fund. I trust Gabe, but we never know what the future has in store for us. But on page 2, there's important language there that says the city manager determined asset allocation and strategy in consultation with finance staff and the city treasurer. So I want to make certain that the consultation with finance staff and city treasurer, it's important to me that that's considered with whatever we do. So my question is that, are we going to have an agreement or how does this work? Because the only thing I see within the agenda packet is the agreement with CalPERS.
City Manager?
Councilmember Garcia, the agreement is with CalPERS. There will be consultation between myself, finance staff, and treasurer to take place before we actually send the contract over.
So my concern is that, let's say future asset allocation, and I don't want to see you go anywhere, but let's say we have a different city manager 4 years down the road. I trust you, but we don't, we want to make sure that there's language that there is consultation for future asset allocation.
I think that'd be appropriate. If council were to adopt this, you could amend to say any change in asset allocation could not take place until consultation was complete.
Thank you.
Any other questions on item B? Okay, questions on item C?
Madam Mayor.
Member Creeps?
In the staff report, it talked about having a master plan, or we discussed the fact that there's kind of a master plan that the city has for street repair. And I'm just wondering, what criteria were applied to determine these particular streets? Was it a matter of that these are the most need of repair, or is it some combination of factors?
Director Semino, is that something you can answer?
Sure. Good evening. Thank you, Mrs. Councilman Crees. Yeah, there is a pavement condition index that we do every 3 years with a consultant. We analyze all the streets in Sierra Madre and they all get a rating. So this project, we take that into consideration. And we also consider our water mains under the street, the gas lines under the street, and other infrastructure in the streets before we want to redo a roadway. So there is other factors that we use when we're deciding on which streets to take care of.
Thank you.
I can supply that pavement condition index to all the council.
That would be great. Thank you.
Any other questions for you?
I mean, as long as Director Smino is up there, let me just ask. So how do our streets compare to other streets within the San Gabriel Valley?
Well, I don't know about the other streets in other cities, but according to the pavement condition index, 86 is an excellent rating, 86 to 100, and we're at 75.6, I think it was, or 76.5 for all of our streets. So if we're comparing to others, we're at a very good rating right now.
And a follow-up question, and so you're going to take care of that area. I see that between Santa Anita and Sycamore Canyon is going to get repaved after the water main is put in. Is that correct?
Yeah, some of the streets we try to follow after the water main installation, and then after we do an inspection of the other infrastructure in the road.
I'm glad to hear that one's on the list. It's one that I've heard quite a bit about from residents. Even before the water mains were being repaired. Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Goss?
Director Savina, I think you're being a little bit modest here. Isn't it true that the city streets have improved significantly in the last 3 or 4 years?
They really have. There was a program that was initiated probably about 6, 8 years ago by the city council that we've been following, and also funding sources have been plentiful for us for the last 8, 6 years too.
Because I'm sure it was significantly less than 76%
Yeah,
back in 2015.
Thank you. Any other questions either for Director Semino or on this item? Seeing none, do we have any questions for item D? Seeing none, we will open this up for public comment. Do you have anyone in the public that would like to comment on the consent calendar? Seeing none, I'll bring it back for discussion with City Council.
Move to approve.
Move to approve. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, do we have a further deliberation on consent calendar?
Just the comment that I made as far as item B, that
Move to approve with the amendment from Councilmember Garcia.
Friendly amendment from Mayor Pro Tem Goss. Do we have a second for the friendly amendment?
Second.
Councilmember Parker says a second?
Yes.
Okay, any further deliberation? Okay, seeing that, do we have, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, say no opposition, no abstentions, the motion carries unanimously. And Madam City Clerk, are we okay on that amendment for item B?
Yes, I got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a public hearing. I think we have in my wet agenda, I think it's Senior Planner Lynn that's going to be presenting on this.
Mayor, this will be the city attorney. We made a last minute change.
Okay, great. City Attorney, Lucian.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you see the presentation on your end?
Yes.
All right, next slide, please. So as you know, Title 17 of the Sierra Madre Municipal Code is the city zoning code.
City Attorney, can you get a little closer to the mic, please?
So Title 17 of the Sierra Madre Municipal Code is the city zoning code. The zoning code lists the different zones within the city and which types of development are permitted, conditionally permitted, or prohibited. There are 8 residential zones under Title 17. The R1, 1-family residential, R2, 2-family residential, R3, medium-high density residential, R4, multiple family residential high density, RC, residential canyon, RP, residential professional, H, hillside management, and C, commercial. In all these zones, you can build residential housing. Recent amendments to state law require these zones to permit certain family daycare homes, modular and manufactured homes, transitional and supportive housing, and emergency shelters. I'll talk about each in the slides following. Next slide. So a family daycare home is a licensed facility that regularly provides protection and supervision for 14 or fewer children for periods of less than 24 hours per day, while the parents or guardians are away. A family daycare home includes a detached single-family dwelling, a townhouse, a dwelling unit within a dwelling, or a dwelling unit within a multifamily dwelling. A family daycare home is where a licensee resides and includes a dwelling or dwelling unit that is rented, leased, or owned. The family daycare homes are comprised of, under our code, small daycare homes and large daycare homes. As you can see in that slide, a small daycare home is one that takes care of 1 to 8 children. A large family daycare home is one that takes care of 7 to 14 children. Under our code, small daycare homes are permitted uses in all these residential zones, and large family daycare homes are conditional use permit or require a conditional use permit. Under state law, the recent changes require that regardless of whether it's a family small daycare home or a large daycare home, it has to be a permitted use in all residential zones. So anywhere where we allow the construction of residential homes, we also have to allow these daycare homes to exist without any conditional use permits or any specific requirements imposed upon them that wouldn't otherwise be imposed on other regular residences. Next slide. Modular homes are factory constructed single-family 1-story detached dwellings certified under state standards. And in Sierra Madre, we only reference modular homes. We don't have a definition for manufactured homes. And they're permitted in all zones where single-family homes are permitted. The new state law requires both modular and manufactured homes to be a permitted use in all residential zones. The amendment that we're proposing is we're simply defining manufactured home to mean modular home. And that amendment came at the request of the consultant that's helping us with our housing element. Next slide. Transitional and supportive housing. Transitional housing means rental housing provided to facilitate the movement of homeless individuals or families to conventional housing. Transitional housing may take the form of single-family or multifamily units and may include supportive services as defined by the government code, operated under program requirements to allow individuals or families to gain necessary life skills in support of independent living. This type of housing may be occupied by a program recipient for a minimum of 6 months, up to a maximum of 2 years, at which it may be recirculated to another eligible program recipient. In contrast, supportive housing means housing with no limit on the length of stay. So whereas transitional housing was 6 to 2 years, supportive housing has no limit on the length of stay, and it's linked to on-site or off-site services that assist the supportive housing resident in retaining the housing
and improving his or her health status and maximizing his or her ability to live and when possible work in the community. Supportive housing is a really broad concept. If you go to the state licensing department, the State Department of Social Services, they're the ones that license these facilities. Its term supportive housing includes group homes, foster family homes, crisis nurseries, runaway youth shelters, small family homes, temporary shelter care facility, and that's just to name a few. So under our municipal code, all zoning districts except the multiple family residential high density zone, so that's the R4, and the hillside management zone, that's the H, permit transitional and supportive housing. State law requires that transitional and supportive housing must be a permitted use in all residential zones and must be subject to the same requirements as other residential uses. So it's kind of similar to the family daycare home amendment, where now if there is going to be a transitional or a supportive housing in a residential area, you can't impose any requirements that you wouldn't otherwise impose on a single family home or other type of residential development. Supportive housing, as defined earlier, has its own separate set of rules. Under our municipal code, as mentioned, supportive housing is a permitted use in the R4 and the H zones. Under state law, now supportive housing is not only a permitted use, but it's a use by right. In other words, if a single family home has to get a discretionary design review permit, as most of our single family homes do when they need to be built, supportive housing, a home for supportive housing no longer does. It's a use by right, so there is no discretionary permit that it could be subject to. Next slide. An emergency shelter means any building used by a nonprofit organization to provide emergency housing and meals on a temporary basis, 6 months or less. The stranded, evicted, transient, or otherwise dislocated and homeless persons until a satisfactory solution to their immediate problem is found. Under our current municipal code, current parking standards for emergency shelters are based on the size of the structure. Under state law, the parking standards must be based on the number of the staff at the emergency shelter, and the parking requirements cannot exceed the total number of parking spaces required for other residential or commercial uses within the same zone. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, City Attorney Gagosian. I have two quick questions. One is, what was the consultant's guidance with respect to the modular versus manufactured? Why to add that language in there? Why to differentiate?
I think planning staff can answer that question better.
Okay, and as she's coming to the podium, you know, permitted versus notification. So if any of these types of businesses are coming down and they want to operate, so they do have to notify. All of these types of businesses have to notify the city, and then the city is required to permit it.
No, that's not correct. So we have no way of knowing which of these facilities are supportive housing, whether they're family daycare centers, because we don't approve them. They don't apply for business licenses. There's no way we can know. The only way we can know is, so I noted in the staff report that we have 2 large family daycare facilities operating in Sierra Madre. Staff wasn't aware of that. The only way I was able to find out is because I contacted the State Department of Social Services and found out who they're licensing to in the city. And they noted that there are 2 facilities operating city.
So when the term is used as permitted, it's allowing, but not providing some type of physical permit or process.
Well, the home itself, when it's constructed, so here's the distinction. If the home is constructed as a family daycare facility, then we would know, because when they apply for there are various permits they might apply for. Let's just say, for example, they apply for an administrative design review permit. They would probably note in their application that they're a family daycare center, and so therefore we'd know. But if they have an existing home and they transition that to be used for a family daycare center, there's no way we'd know that.
but like you were stating, at the state level, there is a requirement to file for a family daycare business or operation. What about these other types of supportive housing and transitional housing? Is there any licensing department at the state level for all those others?
Yes, there are licensing requirements for all of these different types of housing. These protections that exist for them under state law only apply to licensed facilities. So if someone is operating a family daycare home in Sierra Madre that isn't licensed, they need to come to the city and get a business license.
Oh, stuff to come for a business license.
If it's not licensed by the state, if they're doing it without a proper state license, they'd have to come in and get a license from us to operate within the city.
I believe they still need to get one from the state, but that's fine. So thank you. And Senior Planner Lynn, if you have the answer to the modular and manufactured question.
Madam City Mayor, as for the modular housing, it's part of the programmatic task on our housing element for the current cycle. So back in 2013, when we adopted the housing element, as part of the program, we have listed that we will include modular housing and manufactured home in our zoning code. So it is inconsistent. Some of our zone has been allowed modular housing and some of them don't. So this is a cleaned up item for the housing element.
Okay, so it aligns with the language that we have within the city. Thank you. Okay, all right, I asked a lot of questions there. Who else has any questions on the side of? Councilmember Cruz?
Just first a follow-up on the mayor's question. In terms of the state licensing requirements, it sounded like you were able to get the information about the licenses that existed in our city. Is that generally public information, or was that something, special information that you were able to obtain? And I guess my question is, because we won't have any way of knowing at the city level, it seems like this would be something we would need to do periodically, just so we have the understanding of what's happening within the city.
Yeah, so the state is also subject to the California Public Records Act, and I assume that there's no exception for these licensing requirements. And so I would think their documents would be available to the public, although I don't know. I was provided that information, but I wasn't provided it because I'm the city attorney. They just provided it to me, so I'm assuming that information is public.
But you did not have to file a Public Records Act, correct?
I did not file a Public Records Act with the state.
But you're saying that it is subject to a Public Records Act, so in the future they may not provide it and then say you have to file a Public Records Act. Is that correct?
Possible.
And then I just had two more technical questions on the proposed revisions to the code. In a couple of places, the revisions struck notations that the standards would have to apply equally across all uses, permitted uses in a particular zone. And it comes up in 2 or 3 different places. And because that seems to be consistent with the state law that we can apply the same standards for these types of uses as are applied to any other residential home in that area. Was there any particular reason that language was struck? Is it just sort of implied, or is it not consistently throughout the code? I just wondered, because that seemed to be consistent with state law, that it seemed odd that would be struck, because we are able to apply the same standards across these different uses.
Councilor Creeps, can you please point me to the page where that language exists?
Sure. One instance is in chapter 17.24 in the R2 family residential zone. If you look at subsection E, end of that provision says, and subject to the same standards as may be required for dwellings in this zone, which again seemed consistent with the state law. So I wasn't sure if that deletion was purposeful or not.
So that deletion was purposeful. We thought we wanted to be consistent in the language. So as you can see, we have family daycare home listed there as well. We could include that same clause following the family daycare home, we could include it for modular and manufactured homes, and it would apply equally to the transitional and supportive housing. So instead of repeating that same language across all three of those categories, we decided to strike that language with following transitional supportive housing, so we wouldn't give the reader the false impression that the standards apply to transitional housing, but not to modular homes or family daycare homes.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That was what I was hoping the answer would be, that it's sort of an implied standard across the board. And then my last question is about chapter 15.52, the H hillside management zone. I was wondering why transitional and supportive housing was listed both as an allowed use in A and then given its own special section in E. I didn't know if that was just an oversight.
Did you mean 1752 or 15?
Sorry, 1752, the H zone. I don't have page numbers, so sorry.
And 1752-070, what was the paragraph number?
So the first instance is A3. Allowed uses includes, number 3, transitional and supportive housing. I didn't know if that was something different than was meant by adding transitional and supportive housing as its separate item E.
Yeah, so the A talks about no discretionary permit is required. And so that's consistent with the state law because we can't impose discretionary permits now on that type of housing. We can still impose them for family daycare homes, and we can still impose them for other types of homes, like a single family home, but we can't impose discretionary permits on the supportive housing. So that's why that language is in there in A. And we also kept it in E to be consistent with the language we've had throughout the code section that talks about where transitional and supportive housing is permitted use. I think it's fine to strike it from E, given the fact that it's in A, and I'll leave that to the council's discretion.
And I'm sorry, one more technical point. In that same chapter, item D2, is there uses prohibited in the RH zone? It seemed to me if you're going to list in 2A, B, and C, that we also need to add the additional uses that we've added, either E, F, and G, or F.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that last amendment.
Sure, in D of that same chapter, titled uses prohibited in the RH zone.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 says that the is an exception for any use governed by paragraphs A, B, and C.
Mm-hmm.
I think also we should add the additional categories that we're adding in E, F, and G.
Oh, yes, I see. Yes, that amendment makes sense. Thank you, Councilmember Creeves.
Right, this concludes the technical reading portion of the program.
Thank you, Councilmember Creeves. Do you have any other questions on this item?
I have a, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Parkhurst?
So City Attorney, is this a new law that's requiring us to make this change?
It's relatively new. So that the city has a backlog of state amendments that went through that we still haven't updated our code to reflect. And so this is kind of a cleanup. We're making amendments. So some of these changes were made back in 2019, I believe, and in 2020 there was a series of them. In 2021, a few took effect. So this is just a backlog of amendments that need to be made that we're including all in one ordinance.
So to the best of your knowledge, this is not something that happened before 2019.
Correct.
So it's just a little backlog. It's not like we had some of the stuff with the earthquake zoning, which went back decades. We're staying on top of things going forward.
That's correct, Councilman.
Okay.
Councilmember Garcia?
Yes, so this is kind of piggybacking on Councilmember Creeps. She's the contract person here, but as I read 17.52 H Hillside Management Zone, underneath that is 07 land use regulations, and I'm following A through D, and A through D all have some type of regulation or governance or some type of direction, but E, F, and G just look like headers. I don't see what the direction is for E, F, and G, why they're there, and what it's supposed to articulate.
So E, F, and G are there because they are permitted uses under the Hillside Development Management Zone. And so if you look at oh, very good. Thank you for pointing that out. That is a mistake on our part.
Okay.
Yes, that should say what it should
Permitted
be
use, sorry.
is, yes, E should say permitted uses, and then 1, 2, and 3 should be transitional and supportive housing, and then F should be 2, and G should be 3. Thank you.
Sure, I would have never picked up on it if it weren't for Councilmember Creeps. Thanks to her.
So City Attorney, I think you have 3 items that were recommended as changes.
That's correct.
Great. Do we have any other questions on this item?
So I'll continue to piggyback on this one. So does A, B, and C have to apply to the new 1, 2, and 3 under E? So any use not governed, so you've got D1, D2, any use not governed by paragraphs A, B, or C. Does that also apply to transitional supportive housing, modular, and family daycare?
Yes, so that should read now A, B, C, or E, or E.
Would it make sense to replace D and then just make it at the end? So then you have a new D and then it's flowing, and we do that? That seems to me the minor point, but the logic point.
Yes, Councilmember Parkhurst, we can do that.
So we have, it sounds like we have 4 recommendations thus far. Any other questions, comments?
Just a quick question, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
So regarding transitional versus supportive is maybe just a curiosity that I need to scratch here, but it seems like both of them are covered under Government Code Section 65582 as to the individuals who can be under these programs. I just don't see the distinction other than the length of stay between these 2 types of housing components.
If you look at the state, the Department of Social Services website, you'll see that they are kind of different. Transitional housing focuses on homeless individuals. Supportive housing isn't necessarily for homeless individuals. There are all types of supportive housing for people with disabilities or other reasons.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll open this up for public hearing. If there's anyone here that would like to provide comment or public hearing on this item. Madam City Clerk, I don't believe we received anything online either, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So I'll bring this back to council for further discussion. Do I have a motion, and again, with consideration of 4 recommendations from the council?
I move to approve with the 4 modifications to the code revision.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you. And do we have further deliberation on this item? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. The next item for public hearing is the proposed use of facility fees for eligible projects. And I believe we have Finance Director Rolla Leon that will be presenting on this item.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council members. The City of Sierra Madre imposes public facility fees and uses the fees as on eligible projects. And as projects are identified, we bring them forward as recommendations. And today we have 2.
Director, can you speak a little bit more into the mic, please?
Yes, today we have 2 recommendations. It is to use the remaining funds in the transportation category towards the Sierra Vista Lot project instead of community fees as previously approved. And it is recommended to use the balance that becomes available in Quimby fees category towards the Cursing Court Refresh project. As an alternative, City Council may provide staff with alternative direction.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Director Guerrero-Leon on this item? No questions? Okay, we'll open this up for a public hearing on proposed use of facility fees for eligible projects. Is there anyone that would like to provide a comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring this back to City Council for further discussion, comments. Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the facility fees for eligible projects as presented?
I move to approve as presented.
Thank you, Councilmember Garcia. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Goss. All in further deliberations? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And that was passed unanimously. Thank you. Looks like we're at the end of our agenda with the sun shining brightly. Do we have any action items for future meetings? Seeing none, we will adjourn our meeting, and our next meeting will take place on May 11th. Thank you, everyone, for your flexibility with dealing with the weather, and we'll see you next month.